We all know that reading has tremendous benefits, from improving your vocabulary to strengthening your brain. And today I'm excited to share with you some of my all-time favorite books. Now I picked these trying to spread through different genres and topics, hitting different aspects of life. I've been reading every day for the past 2 years, so I can say with confidence that these are my favorite pieces of literature that have positively impacted my life. I only picked books that I either genuinely enjoyed reading and or that I utilized the knowledge of the books daily. So starting off the list, and I might be biased because of how much I actually respect the author, but it's Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. What a book! I recommend this to everyone who is willing to read, and I even bought this as a Christmas gift for my family members. To quickly sum this book up, David Goggins tells the story of his messed up childhood and how he went from overweight to then a Navy SEAL to later on even an ultra marathon runner, achieving these what seem to be impossible feats. This book is more motivational than educational, but it just shows you how much we actually underestimate our own potential. He also wrote another book titled Never Finished, which is also a must read. However, I do prefer Can't Hurt Me, and I can honestly just talk about David Goggins for hours on end. He's just such a remarkable and fascinating guy. To motivate you guys a bit to read these two books, I'm going to read to you some of my favorite passages from the books. So here it goes. Quote, "No matter what you or I achieve in sports, business, or life, we can't be satisfied. Life is too dynamic a game. We're either getting better or we're getting worse. Yes, we need to celebrate our victories. There's power in victory that's transformative. But after our celebration, we should dial it down, dream up new training regimens, new goals, and start at zero the very next day." He also later says in his next book, Never Finished, that mental toughness and resilience fade if not being used. He says it all the time, you're either getting better or worse, you're never staying the same. My favorite quote from Never Finished, this book right here, is, "Every statistician will warn you that whenever you deal in probabilities, there will be outliers. Always." Guys, I really urge you to read all of David Goggins' work. He's such a remarkable individual who's accomplished so many amazing things. The entire reason I got through my marathon last summer is because of the Taking Souls method that he popularized. Please read these. There's a reason it made the top of my list. Moving on to the next book on the list, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now this book is recommended all the time and for good reason. Dale Carnegie provides valuable insights on how to effectively communicate and interact with others and build strong relationships. He will clarify what you should be doing and saying in a conversation to make the other individual like you. This book has completely changed my perspective when dealing with people. It provides so much value. What really stuck with me when reading this book is when he says, "Remember that the people you are talking to are 100 times more interested in themselves and their wants and problems than they are you and your problems. A person's toothache means more to that person than a famine in China that kills 1 million people." Think of that the next time you start a conversation. If you are around people often, then you will benefit tremendously from reading and applying the lessons taught in this book. Next book on the list is an absolute classic, and it's The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. If you aren't familiar with Robert Greene's work, then where have you been? He also wrote The Laws of Human Nature, 33 Strategies of War, The Art of Seduction, and so much more. The amount of research he does in his books is absurd, and you can really tell. His books always go into incredible depth and always end up just being absolutely gargantuous. It took me over a month to get through this bad boy right here, but it was well worth it. Now this book delves into the dynamics of power and influence. Robert Greene provides 48 laws that can be used in various situations in order to gain or maintain power. Each law is accompanied by very interesting historical examples and anecdotes to illustrate its application. Like I said previously, he did a lot of research. The 48 Laws of Power provides insights into human behavior, tactics for navigating power dynamics, and strategies for achieving personal and professional success. Some of my favorite chapters include chapters 1, 3, 16, 38, 39, and 48. Originally, when I was going through my notes to pick out my favorite chapters, I actually had picked out 12. That just tells you how outstanding this book actually is. It took me over half an hour to decide which of my favorite chapters to cut down on and to keep for the video. Next up on the list is The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida. Now, I want to emphasize that this book genuinely helped me a lot, specifically when dealing with women, and I've actually read it multiple times. The author explores the concept of masculinity and how men can live a more purposeful and fulfilling life. It delves into topics such as relationships, sexuality, spirituality, providing insights and guidance for men to embrace their true potential and become more conscious individuals. The book emphasizes the importance of balancing masculine and feminine energy and encourages men to cultivate their masculinity. An absolute must-read for the men out there. You don't have to be 6'4", 300 pounds of sheer muscle and have a beard like Hagrid from Harry Potter in order to be considered masculine. David Deida will explain to you and teach you lessons on how to actually grow your masculinity. Something I found really interesting when reading is when he says sexual attraction is based on sexual polarity, which is the force of passion that arcs between masculine and feminine poles. If men and women are clinging to a politically correct sameness, even in moments of intimacy, then sexual attraction disappears. Now, this doesn't come from this book right here, but from Patrick Bet-David, and I thought it was incredibly pertinent and conveys the same message that David Deida is trying to convey through his book. And essentially what Patrick Bet-David said is that in every situation, a man should seek to lead, love, improve, and respect. And I think that was absolutely fascinating and well said. And that's exactly what David Deida is trying to convey in this book. Men out there, read this. Moving on to the next book on the list, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, specifically the revised edition. Now, if you guys know nothing about investing, accounting, or finance in general, then I highly recommend that you start by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, Rich Dad Poor Dad will give you an extremely basic understanding of how your money should flow and what you should be focusing on buying. But once you've read that, then you can move on to this excessively thick book. This also took me over a month to read, and I filled out almost 3 notebooks just from notes from this book. That's how much value is inside of here. This is a must read for those that are into investing, either passively or aggressively, but I do want to make something clear, and this is a quote from Iman Gadzhi, and he says, "Investments won't make the poor rich, they make the rich wealthy." You can't expect to become a billionaire after reading this, but it will give you insight on how to analyze companies, how the market flows and reacts, basic fundamentals you should be following, and what kind of investor you are. I've concluded from reading this that I'm a defensive investor and still follow the principles set in place for defensive investors in this book, my favorite chapters being 1, 8, and 14. It's also essential that you read the commentary at the end of each chapter written by Jason Zweig, because this book was written sometime in the 1940s, so a lot of the principles are outdated, so it's good that you get the revised edition and read the commentary. Next up is one that I found a lot of value in, and it's Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, this book explores the power of small habits and how they can lead to remarkable results. It provides practical strategies and techniques for building and breaking habits, and emphasizes the importance of making tiny changes that compound over time. This book focuses on optimizing and identifying our cues, cravings, responses, and rewards that drive our behavior. I believe it's super important for us to understand our own behavior and impulses in order to control them, and this book provides insight on exactly that. Something that really stuck with me from this book is the story of how 35% of American troops in Vietnam during the Vietnam War had tried heroin, and as many as 20% of those troops were addicted to heroin. But when the troops came back to America, only 5% of the 20% became re-addicted within a year. In other words, 9 out of 10 soldiers eliminated their addiction nearly overnight, a drug where 90% of heroin addicts become re-addicted after rehab. That's incredible. The lesson from that story is how your behavior can influence environmental cues, and must read, guys. Last book on the list is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Before I even start talking about this book, I want to point out that the only reason it's so low on my list is because I haven't finished it yet. I'm only about halfway through, but it's so incredibly interesting that I thought I would put it on the list even though I hadn't finished it yet. In this book, Jordan Peterson provides various different rules and principles that can guide you towards a more meaningful and responsible life. Peterson delves into topics such as personal responsibility, the importance of honesty, the balance between chaos and order, and the significance of finding a purpose in life. The book offers valuable insights and practical advice for navigating the complexities of existence and striving for personal growth and fulfillment. I was immediately captivated from the first chapter, where he compares us to lobsters and talks about Price's Law, where a very small number of people produce very much of everything, where 80 to 90% of all women go for the top 10% of men, where the richest 85 people have as much as the bottom 3.5 billion, where most of the scientific research is produced by a very small number of scientists, and so on. I recently got into philosophy, and Jordan Peterson is just a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and I think you can see how interesting this book actually becomes. So there you have it. Those were my 7 or technically even 9 of my favorite books to date. Now, I realize that most of these books, or maybe even all of them, are recommended everywhere, but there's a good reason for that. This video is more tailored for maybe somebody who hasn't read yet or who doesn't read that often. I made this list because these are genuinely my favorite books that have helped me a lot, or that I actually just genuinely enjoyed reading. I urge you guys to read these books and form your own opinion. If you would like me to make a more specific video about great books for specific niches such as philosophy or investing, let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Until next time.